Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning study. Stephen and I had a discussion, so we're starting a bit late, but just dealing with Daniel chapter 8 and the vision by the banks of the Uli, which I have as Daniel being brought to 457, but that's a whole other study. So we're going to go back to 2 Samuel. But before we do, let's have a word of prayer. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, we are thankful for the time that we have to study and the things that you have shown us in studying your word. And we need your Holy Spirit in all of our personal study and in the things Stephen and I have studied out. We need your help because we are human and we are prone to failure and we understand very little. So we ask as we open your word this morning that your Holy Spirit can again be here to instruct us, to bring us closer to you, and help us to prepare for the time that's coming upon this world. Help us to understand 2 Samuel and how these things apply to our lives and to the time that we live in. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Okay. Well, hopefully that was interesting for those people who were there for mine and Stephen's short discussion, which we didn't record, of course. But so I hope everyone's having a good day. Here in Alberta, they say we're going to have a bunch of snow, but we'll see. But anyway, it was a nice walk this morning before the snow. So in 2 Samuel, we've been reading through the last part we had read was through this rebellion of Sheba. And this is pretty interesting. So when it comes to the word Sheba, we know that that's the word that is translated as 7 times in Leviticus 26. It's a different Hebrew number because 7651 is the Hebrew number for the number 7. Sheba is just the number 7. And this is 7652, the Strong's numbers, simply because it's a name. So Strong's in his dictionary, when he has a word that's used as a name instead of just as part of the grammatical structure of a sentence, he gives it a different Hebrew number, usually the number after that. Sometimes there's also the Aramaic word, which is the same. So when the Aramaic word is the same, that he'll give it another number. So you might have number 7650. This isn't the case, but 7650 would be the number 7. The Aramaic would be 7651. And then if it's used as a name of a person or a place, it'd be 7652. In this case, there's no Arabic. Well, there's an Arabic number for 7, but it's not Sheba. So 7651 is Sheba, which is 7, the number 7. And 7652 is the name Sheba, which also means the number 7. So it's just the same word. So we have this rebellion of Sheba. Now, could this rebellion of Sheba be those in the movement who are misusing the 2520? It's just a simple question.
That would be an interesting premise.
Okay. Yeah. So, because if we're saying that this is the true use of the name Sheba, which it could be, then we would have a different interpretation of this. But this is a rebellion of Sheba. Now, it could be that it's a rebellion of the 7 times against, in this case, it would be against who? Who is this rebellion of Sheba? Who is this Sheba? And why is he rebelling? And what's going on in this story? Why is he rebelling, if you remember?
As you're diving into this, Sheba is a Benjamite.
Yeah.
So as a Benjamite, his primary loyalty would first have been to Saul, not to God. It would have been to Saul because he's looking that the temporal leader was more important than the spiritual leader.
Right. And Saul we have as representing FFA or Jeff, the leadership that's part of the first angel's message. And now Sheba, of course, the 2520, the 7 times, is connected to the first angel's message in our history, right?
Okay.
Even though it's not presented until after 9/11, it's still a part of the message that Jeff presents.
as this is showing
Mm-hmm.
in verse 2, where you have the digits of 220, the digits of restoration. Every man of Israel went up from after David and followed Sheba, the son of Bichri. But the men of Judah clave unto their king from Jordan even to Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
So is this showing a division, a separation of not only within the movement, but also from the corporate church?
Okay. So
Because
this
it's
is
saying all Israel.
okay. Okay. So okay, first we know that he's going to blow this trumpet, right? That's the
Okay.
first
So
thing.
he is blowing the trumpet, yes.
Yeah. And it says we have no part in David. Now, if David, we've had David represent different things, but primarily July 18, 2020. So if we could go back to this and say David represents July 18, 2020, this would be those who are going to separate the 7 times from July 18, 2020.
Correct.
Okay. And every man of Israel. So here we have this word call, which is every, right? Means the whole, right? So it's not like there are times, obviously, that when you can talk about every, it doesn't necessarily mean every. When you say all, it doesn't necessarily mean all, because we do that in English as well, right? So you can't always say that just because it says all or every, that it's, categorically every single Israelite. But we can say it represents a large portion, and that would include the various groups within Israel, the different tribes, right? Excluding Judah, correct?
All right.
Right? Because it's going to say all of Israel, but the men of Judah clave unto their king. So obviously it doesn't include Judah, but includes the other tribes. That's basically what it's trying to say. Okay? So would this be then a rejection? So you're trying to include the corporate church in this?
Well, I'm asking if Sheba could include the corporate church, since this is stating that every man of Israel.
Yeah, okay. But we know that the corporate church has never embraced the 7 times. So I would think it would have to refer to the movement if we're going to have Sheba represent the 7 times.
All right.
Okay? Does that make sense?
I'm asking
Yeah.
the question so we can
Yeah.
discuss this.
Yep. So, but my explanation makes sense to you. Why we
It looks
wouldn't?
logical.
Okay, good. Yeah. Well, it's usually always logical, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's always correct, because it depends on the assumptions that we start with. But anyway, that's another point of logic. So we have people who left off following David. This to me would be people who had followed July 18, right? And followed just the 7 times. So that is, there's a separation of July 18th from the 2520. Now, has Jeff embraced the 7 times in him coming back? Is he still teaching the 7 times? And we can say, yes, he is, right? Can you logically teach the 7 times knowing what we know and reject July 18, 2020?
Not really.
No. Now, why not?
The point right now, when the comment was made that we needed to abandon all light since 2012, it means that the greater light that we have determined that has been shining on the 7 times would have to be set aside.
Right. Now,
And
this
part
is
of that light,
yeah, go on.
part of that light has to do with the 18th of July.
Right. Now, this would be similar to the church when they reject, because I've had discussions with, an Adventist minister, friend of mine. He rejects all of the light that we got on the book of Ezra dealing with the chronology in Ezra, even though that totally supports the idea of the 70 weeks and the 2,300 days beginning in 457. Right? So can the church maintain their belief in the 2,300 days and the 70 weeks without an understanding of the 2520, for instance?
No. because they
No,
can't explain the 2300 days, and they've never explained properly the 70 weeks.
right. And this is something that I've known for a long time, even before I was in this movement, which is why I sort of always had this tentative. I mean, I was an Adventist, but I understood that there was this problem that Adventists had dealing with the chronology of the 2300 days and the 70 weeks. That is, it wasn't something we could prove. We could believe in it, but there were good arguments against our position based on what the church was saying, and especially in regards to chronology and, of course, the daily, right? Because the daily was a problem. If you're going to interpret the daily as Christ's heavenly ministry, then how can you get the 2300 days? And Desmond Ford saw that quite clearly, that if we take the new view of the daily, we have to get rid of the 2300 days, right? Daniel 8 makes no sense. So we have a similar thing that happens within the movement in regard to July 18th. That is, it's fine to say, well, we had this light and we made this prediction and it failed. So we're going to go back to where we received that light, where that started. But they're going to just go back to 2012. But that light and basically I think the light is that he's rejecting is Ezra 7:9, right? That would be where Jeff would have to say that the message departed. He doesn't explicitly detail it out, which is kind of problematic. It's just kind of this vague thing that all the light that came since 2012. But that would include Ezra 7:9, the light that didn't come from him, because Ezra 7:9 didn't come from him. So Jeff rightly recognizes that if you have Ezra 7:9, you're going to have July 18th. But also, he's undermining the 2520. Now, why is a rejection of Ezra 7:9 also a rejection of the 2520? How could we clearly show that? Because what are our arguments for the 2520 that allow the 2520 to be supported, right? Because we could just say, well, we just accept it because it's on the 1843 chart. And that's just going to be the 2520 of Miller, right? We're not going to have Hiram Edson's 2520 and the prophetic mirror. So if we get rid of Ezra 7:9, don't we undermine our understanding of the 2520 and the prophetic mirror? That God gave us light that led in a certain direction. If you go back and you try to undo that, you have to continue to go back, right? Because we make an argument that if you reject the 2520, then you also reject Millerite history. You can't hold on to the 2300 days and reject the 2520. If you're going to talk about the disappointment within the movement, those that rejected July 18th as a parallel to October 22nd, 1844, well, then you have to reject October 22nd, 1844, because you're giving the same reasons for the rejection of October 22nd or to July 18th that they gave for October 22nd, right?
Okay.
Because nothing happened on July 18th, so we must have been wrong. Nothing happened on October 22nd, 1844, as far as anybody could see, right? Jesus didn't come back. Their prediction failed. There were counsels in the Bible against setting dates for the second coming, right? No man knoweth the day or the hour. It's not for you to know the times or the seasons that the Lord has kept in his own power, something like that, right? And we could look at those who were arguing against time setting in the 1840s as the ones who were correct. They were right. Millerites were wrong. So you can't be a Seventh-day Adventist if you use that argument. And if you're going to use it against July 18th, you have to use it against October 22nd, 1844. And those Christians who object to October 22nd, 1844 are also undermining the 70 weeks and Christ coming, because the understanding of the 70 weeks is Christ is going to come, the Messiah is going to come, and he's going to overthrow the Romans and restore the Jews. Did any of that happen? Well, he didn't overthrow the Romans. The Romans destroyed the temple and the city, right? So there was a false interpretation, but the 70 weeks were correct. So So
Right.
those that, mock October 22nd, 1844 as the greatest face-saving device are shooting themselves in the foot, because as Christians, that's what the enemies of Christianity say. The resurrection of Christ was just a face-saving device of the disciples, right? So you have to recognize when you're arguing against yourself. So I guess what we would say is that this man of Belial, whose name was Sheba, is somebody that's connected, or those that are connected with the seven times, but are rejecting July 1821. That's the conclusion I've come to. However, we're going to understand the rest of this and what happens, what it means when his head is cut off, and who this woman is and all that type of stuff. I don't know. But just on the surface reading of what we have done so far, and we're looking at this, that would make sense. And we have to see if that follows as we go through this story. So we read through this fairly quickly yesterday at the end of the study. So now we then have every man of Israel, which would have to include those in the movement who are leaving off following David, right? They went up from after David and followed Sheba. So they used to follow David, July 18, 2020, but now they're going to just follow the seven times. Now, where we would place this, whether we just place this after July 18, or it's just this whole history after July 18, we know that Jeff is still embracing the 2520 and inconsistently, but also rejecting July 18 and rejecting the symbolic use of dates and certain use of the symbolic use of numbers, but not all of it, because he still uses some. And David came to his house at Jerusalem, and the king took the 10 women, his concubines. So the thing is, we have the story of the 10 concubines, which is in the previous story. There's the ones that are left in Jerusalem. What's his name? What's the name of the guy?
That Ahithophel had told Absalom to take in front of all Israel.
Yeah, Absalom. Yeah, so Absalom. Don't ask me why I couldn't remember Absalom's name. So Absalom then is going to take these concubines. And now we have 10 women. Women usually represent a church, and 10 can represent a test, 10 can represent the world. It can represent the 10 virgins. So 10 is a type of number of completeness. Usually when it's the 10 virgins, it's also 5, right? So 5 wise, 5 foolish, but we don't see any division of that here. But it could just include, and we'd have to go back and try to understand how Absalom fits into the story here, but this is a separate narrative. But is it somehow a defiling of the message of Adventism by Absalom? And so I'm not really sure. But David's going to take these women and he's going to put them in ward, right? So we don't usually use that word too much, but that's just in a watch or a sentry or a post preservation. So basically they're kept separate. He's going to feed them, right? So it says he fed them, and that word just simply it means to keep in, hence to measure, figuratively to maintain in various senses. Be able to abide, bear, comprehend, contain, feed, forbearing. So they're going to have a provision given to them is the idea. So there's some provision given to these 10 women, but went not in unto them, right? So he doesn't have a relationship with them anymore. So they were shut up unto the day of their death, living in widowhood. Okay, so there's a bunch of things here that we would look at as symbols. The word shut up, 6887, to cramp literally or figuratively, transitively or intransitively. It means like an adversary, be an adversary, afflict, besiege, distress, enemy, narrow, or press. So obviously they're not in a a good situation. So to be shut up in this way, it can also be translated as vex, pangs, be in strait, be in trouble. Okay. So whatever these women represent, they're separated. And Iran asks a question. I wonder if all the children of Absalom, I have to look at the chat there, came from this event. I don't think so. There's no indication that they would. I'm not sure. So anyway, they're going to be living in widowhood. So that's widowhood. Almanuth. No. So Alma, which I'm familiar with that word. Bereavement. Forsaken. Alman. Almanuth. Alman. Okay. Prolonged from 481 in the sense of bereavement. Okay, so they're going to be living bereaved. And living, you can see that number 2424. That's that word life, kayuth, right? So anyway, we have these 10 women, concubines, they're shut up. Whatever they symbolize, I would think they have something to do with an aspect of the church. Then said the king unto Amasa, assemble me the men of Judah within 3 days, and be thou here present. So 3 days can represent 3 years. It also, sometimes we've had 3 days represent the 3 dates. And those 3 dates are November 9th, 2019, July 18, 2020, and December 25th, 2021. So that's possible. It has something to do with that. But, and then Amasa, we understand that his number 6021, that is an iteration of the digits 1260, which is the 1260, which is half of the 2520. But also, if we just take the digits 126, that's the 126 shekels, which is the 2520. But usually 1260 refers to the 2520 for northern Israel, right, which is divided into 2 periods of 1260s. So Amasa went to assemble the men of Judah, but he tarried longer than the set time which he had appointed him. So you got this tarrying. Now he tarried longer. That word just is the word delay, right? Yakar. So to delay, so he delayed, right? Longer, right? So the idea is tarried longer. We'd have to put longer in there. You can just see said tarried then. But it basically, he delayed from the Moed, right? The Moed. And the Moed is a feast or a set time. It can also be a congregation, right? A gathering, right? Which he had appointed him. So this is appointed Ya'ad. It means to fix upon, by implication, to meet at a stated time, to summon to trial, to direct in a certain quarter or position, to engage for marriage, to agree, to assemble, to gather, to meet, right? and again, just going back to Moed, it properly is an appointment that is a fixed time or season. So he's not going to come at the appointed time that they'd agreed upon. So we would connect this to something to do with our lives, right? That is, there's some delay. So however we're going to apply that, or where we're going to apply that, I don't know. Any thoughts on this so far? Yeah, and Iran says it would explain the pillar that Absalom puts up because he doesn't have any children. I don't know. I'm not really sure about the pillar. Just going back to if all the children of Absalom came from this event. Yeah, that's still a puzzle to me about the pillar that he set up, but I don't know how it would explain it particularly, because it doesn't tell us when he built this pillar. Any thoughts on this so far? Because I'm doing all the talking here. I'm just going through my thought process. So if you have any comments, please comment. And David said to Abishai, now shall Sheba the son of Berkai do us more harm than it did Absalom. Take thou thy Lord's servants and pursue after him, lest he get him fenced cities and escape us. Now David's saying this to Abishai, but we know that Joab is going with him. So it could be that he's just telling Abishai to go along with Joab, right? But it just doesn't tell us that Joab's going. That's kind of just assumed. And he's going to be there in the story. He's going to be the one that puts the sword into Amasa. So this failure of Amasa to come at the appointed time, we have to keep that in mind, what this particularly means. The thing about this one is, we do take these verse numbers. So 2 Samuel 20, verse 5, has all the digits of the year 2025. So maybe it has something to do with that. I don't know. But it's a thought.
It has the 2520 also.
Yeah, you do have the 2520 as well, which we know that 2025 and 2520. A lot of people thought, we were teaching that Jesus is coming back in the year 2025 because they couldn't distinguish between the number 2520 and 2025. I mean, it seems kind of humorous that people would do that, but that's what they were doing. I even had people who believed in the 2520 who believed that we were teaching that Jesus was coming in 2025. That's what they thought the 2520 was. So don't ask me how they did that, but okay. And so he's going to say that Absalom could do us more harm, or Sheba can do us more harm than Absalom. So what is this harm then? And that kind of keep in your mind that if David is saying that Sheba the son of Bichri would do us more harm than did Absalom, what would that mean in this context of our movement, right? So we have to think about that. And we've got to pursue before he gets to any fenced cities. Right, so he could capture some fenced cities, set up a defense. So we need to make sure that we get him before he gets to a fenced city. And there went out after him Joab's men and the Kerethites and the Pelethites. Right, so he sends this man. He's directing this to Abishai, but Joab's men are going out. Obviously, Joab is there as well. And all the mighty men, and they went out of Jerusalem to pursue after Sheba the son of Bichri. And when they were at the great stone, which is in Gibeon. Now, I don't know what this great stone, which is in Gibeon, does. I tried to find this out. So we don't have this mentioned any other place that I know of. Any thoughts on that? So it would be some kind of landmark or something? Do we know anything about this? Other than
no, I don't know anything about it, except I'm guessing that maybe it was some kind of a monument to the truce between Joshua and the Gibeonites, Judges 9.
Okay, so maybe something to do with a monument about the league between Joshua and the Gibeonites?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm just speculating.
Yeah. Now, it says King Solomon in 1 Kings 3, verse 4 to 15, King Solomon's going to go to Gibeon and offer sacrifices. And then some people think that there was an altar that Saul consecrated at Gibeon. But then some people say it's just some landmark, prominent feature of the landscape. Maybe that it's some kind of monument as well. So people have different speculation, but there's nothing explicitly in the Bible that we have a story about that we can, other than here of this great stone, which is at Gibeon. So they were at the great stone, which is in Gibeon. Okay. Then we have Amasa went before them. So he's ahead of them. And Joab's garment that he had put on was girded unto him, and upon it a girdle with a sword fastened upon his loins in the sheath thereof. Joab's garment that he had put on. So he had this garment, which you have to take into account. Maybe there's a symbol there. Med or mad. So his vesture, his armor, his clothes, his garment. And it was girded upon him, and upon it a girdle with a sword fastened upon his loins in the sheath thereof. And as he went forth, it fell out. So whether he intentionally had the sword fall out, or whether it just did. And Joab said to Amasa, Art thou in health, my brother? And Joab took Amasa by the beard with the right hand to kiss him. But Amasa took no heed to the sword that was in Joab's hand. So he smote him therewith in the fifth rib, and shed out his bowels to the ground, and struck him not again, but he died. And he died. So Joab and Abishai's brother pursued after Sheba, the son of Bichri. Okay, so he's going to kill Amasa. We got lots of symbols here. One is the hand, and then the word smote, which we've connected to December 25th. And then we have the fifth rib, that word fifth, 2570. That is the number of days in the week of Christ, from September 30th, 27 AD to October 12th, 34 AD at the stoning of Stephen. And that's an inclusive count, right? So it includes the first day and the last day. He shed out his bowels on the ground and struck him not again, and he died. So Joab and Abishai's brother pursued after Sheba, the son of Bichri. And one of Joab's men stood by him and said, He that favoreth Joab, and he that is for David, let him go after Joab. Okay, one of Joab's men stood by him and said, okay, what is he saying here? Verse 11. So he's just saying, he's that for Joab and also for David. So he's let him go with Joab, right?
Yeah.
So there's a decision being made. People have to make a choice. Are they going to favor Joab and David together and go with Joab? So I'm not really sure what these would symbolize within our movement, but there is a decision that's being made by one of Joab's men. Now, what do we think of Joab as a symbol? I mean, first, how do we look at him as a person within this history? Is Joab good?
I think he's a ruthless politician and a meddler.
Yeah, I don't like Joab at all, right? I mean, he's on the side of David, but he definitely is not in the same spirit as David is, right? He doesn't understand. He's worldly wise.
Mm-hmm.
He's not very spiritual. He doesn't understand David's actions. And he thinks he's looking out for David, but in reality, he's not really helping David. Okay, that's the way I look at Joab, as much as I understand about human character. But that's the way that I would look at it. Okay, so and it's going to be one of Joab's men, from the Hebrew words there, because you're going to have Naar, that is a boy of Joab, from a boy of Joab. So a boy that is an adolescent. So this is a young person. And when it says stood by him, this would be Amasa's body, right? That's what I understand. So he's going to stay by the body of Amasa and saying, if you're for David, you're for Joab, go with Joab. That's what I understand.
He'll wind up dead. He'll be assassinated. So it sounds like it's trying to instill fear.
Yeah, I think so. You kind of have to make a choice of where you stand. Now, Amasa wallowed in his blood in the midst of the highway. And when the man saw that all the people stood still, so I would think that this would be this boy, but I'm not certain. He removed Amasa out of the highway into the field and cast a cloth upon him. And he saw that everyone that came by him stood still. So he's like, instead of these people stopping all the time, take the body, bring it off to the side, cover it, and then, people just continue going instead of stopping. Not sure what that would mean as a symbol, so we'd have to understand that. Now, when he was removed out of the highway, all the people went on after Joab to pursue after Sheba, the son of Bichri. And he went through all the tribes of Israel unto Abel and to Beth Maacah and all the Berites, and they were gathered together and went also after him. So he went through all the tribes of Israel unto Abel and to Beth Maacah and all the Berites, and they were gathered together and went also after him. I'm not sure, again, I'm not sure what this means, what exactly So is this person standing by the body? He went through all the tribes of Israel. Not sure. So it says here in Jameson Fawcett Brown, beating up for recruits. But there the prompt marches of Joab overtook and hemmed him in by a close siege in the place. So the he here, I guess this must be Sheba who's doing this. He's trying to get people to join him. Is that correct? Is that what it's saying in verse 14?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, it's just strange language that we wouldn't normally use nowadays. Let's see what they say here. But here he's saying Joab went through all the tribes of Israel to Abel and Beth Makkah and Albiram. Or Abel has been preserved in the large Christian village. Bill, okay. So the question is, who is the he? And he went through all the tribes of Israel. So not sure who the he is referring to, because that could be referring to Joab and it could be referring to Sheba. Okay, but it says they were gathered together and went also after him. So that's why they're saying this is Joab. Okay, that's possible. So it could be Joab doing the recruiting. I'm not certain yet. And they came and besieged him in Abel of Beth Makkah, which here they came and besieged him, that is Sheba. And they cast up a bank against the city and stood in the trench, and all the people that were with Joab battered the wall to throw it down. So they get to the city. What's that?
Sorry, for trench it says in my margin, the utmost wall. It's put against the utmost wall.
Okay. Rampart or fortress wall. Fortress or wall, rampart. Okay, that's possible. And all the people that were with Joab battered the wall to throw it down. Okay, so they get to this city, Abel of Beth Makkah. So it looks like what they're doing is they're doing a rampart, right, to go up against the city, right? So this is part of a siege to break down the wall, so you can get in, and then they're going to batter this wall to throw it down. Okay. Then cried a wise woman out of the city. Now here we have the word wise, which we've seen before. It's chakam, and it means like cunning or wise. So it can intelligent, skillful, artful. But we note the number 2450. And so this is associated with the Great Jubilee of Miller, right? So we could just take note of that. Whether that symbol applies here or not, we don't know. But we are going to have a here. So we're going to have a doubling, right? And here, 80, 85. Say, I pray you unto Joab, come near hither, that I may speak with thee. Okay, so this woman's going to talk to Joab. And when he was come near unto her, the woman said, Art thou Joab? And he answered, I am he. Then she said unto him, Hear the words of thine handmaid. And he answered, I do hear. And she spake, saying, They were wont to speak in old times, saying, They shall surely ask counsel at Abel. And so they ended the matter. And I am one of them that are peaceable and faithful in Israel. And thou seekest to destroy a city and the mother in Israel. Why wilt thou swallow up the inheritance of the Lord? So this wise woman, she says, you're going to destroy this city. And this city of Abel, right? Abel, which means the meadow, has been a city that people would go to get counsel. Okay? That is, they could end the matter by getting counsel at Abel. Does that make sense? She says you shouldn't destroy the city because it is a place where people came to get counsel. So what would that city be? Is it a good city? Is it a bad city? What would it represent in our history? That would be being destroyed if you're going to break down this wall and you're going to destroy a city and a mother in Israel, right? And that word mother is Im. And usually you say, like you call your mother Ima in Hebrew. Abba is father, Ima is mother. So we have to consider this story about this wise woman and this city, what it would represent in the movement. And Joab answered and said, far be it, far be it. So again, we're going to have this doubling, right? We had in verse 16, this here, I say, pray you unto Joab, come near, right? Now he's going to say, far be it, far be it. Of course, the doubling is intensity, right? Or what's the word? I always forget the word. Anyway, from me that I should swallow up or destroy. So far be it from me that I should swallow up or destroy. The matter is not so, but the man of the Mount Ephraim, but a man of Mount Ephraim, Sheba the son of Bichri, so this is what Joab is saying by name, hath lifted up his hand against the king, even against David. Deliver him only, and I will depart from the city. And the woman said unto Joab, behold, his head shall be thrown down to thee over the wall. So Sheba, if Sheba refers to the 7 times, and Sheba's going to go to this city for refuge, right, for protection. And we have this wise woman talking to Joab, saying you shouldn't destroy the city. But in order to save the city, they're going to cut the head off of Sheba and throw it over the wall so that Joab's not going to destroy the city. So we're going to have to understand what this means. Then the woman went unto all the people in her wisdom, and they cut off the head of Sheba, the son of Bichri, and cast it out to Joab. And he blew a trumpet, and they retired from the city, every man to his tent, and Joab returned to Jerusalem unto the king. So this would be a destruction of the 7 times. So how would we understand this? Well, I don't know if we have that answer to it yet. But it looks like Joab, who I don't see as a good figure, and I'm not sure that I trust this woman. I don't know her. But also, it seems like a strange thing for her to just give up Sheba and to take his head and sever it from his body and throw it over the wall. It's not generally considered very nice. And so I think it represents something negative, some rejection of the 7 times. Now Joab was over all the host of Israel, and Benaniah the son of Jehoiada over the Kerethites and over the Pelethites. And Adoram was over the tribute, and Jehoshaphat the son of Ahilud was recorder, and Sheba was scribe, and Zadok and Abiathar were the priests. And Ira, also the Jairite, was a chief ruler about David. So it's just going to mention what happens here. Joab, he's now over the host of all Israel, and he'll list these other people who have different. Now, so Benaniah, he's over the Kerethites and over the Pelethites. Again, who are the Kerethites and the Pelethites? It says here, executioners, a group of 4 mercenary soldiers serving as a bodyguard for King David. And then the Pelethites, these are couriers, collective name for the guardsmen of David. So they seem to be mercenaries that have been hired. And Benaniah, he's going to be in charge of them. Benaniah, Jehovah has built, or Jehovah has built up. One of David's mighty warriors. He's the son of Jehovah knows. Yehoiah. And then we have Adoram, which means my Lord is exalted. He's going to be over the tribute. So he's like the treasurer, collects the money from different places. Jehoshaphat is the recorder, and Jehovah judged. Shaphat is judge. Son of Ahilud, which means brother of one born. He's going to be the recorder. So Zakar marks, keeps track of things. And Sheba is going to be a scribe. Sheba, which means false. It says, doesn't make sense. So Strong says means false. Brown's Daughter Greek says Jehovah contends, which doesn't really make sense. Shav. Okay, because there's no Jehovah in the name Sheba. So it's Shin Vav Aleph. Okay, he's the scribe, so that should be Sefer, Sephar. And Zadok and Abiathar are the priests. And then you have Ira, which means wakefulness or watchful of the city. He's a Jairite. So that is descendant of Jair. And was the chief ruler. So that should be Cohen, a priest. Cohen usually means a priest, doesn't it? Yeah. So they translate this here, chief ruler about David. So I'm not sure, priest, principal officer, or chief ruler. Okay. Okay. So there's a lot of information there. We've gone through it a couple times here. Can we say that this action of cutting off the head of Sheba is not a good thing? that this would be a rejection of the 7 times that's being illustrated here, ultimately.
Or could it be a rejection of all the falsehoods about the 7 times, all the wrong ideas?
Like a misuse of the 7 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the reason why they would reject the 7 times is because in order to reject David, you're going to misuse the 7 times. So the 7 times are being destroyed as it's kind of complicated, like to really try to get my head around what this could mean specifically. But cutting the head off of the 7 times, right? So and throwing it over a wall, if Sheba represents the 7 times, this wouldn't be a good thing. Like that this is done to the 7 times, but the 7 times is being misused. That's why it's done. So I'm just trying to think of how this would relate to what's happened in the movement. So first, we're going to have the 7 times rebelling against July 18th. So we can see that there is a rejection of July 18th by those who hold to the 7 times. So what would it mean that the 7 times are going to have their head cut off? Is Angela suggesting like a misuse or the errors of the 7 times? Now, what about these different groups that exist that aren't the Canadian and American group? So are there other people using the chart and using the 7 times?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we're familiar with some of the groups. We know Don Frost is one, but there's lots of groups, actually. I run into them on YouTube, right? They'll believe the 7 times. They believe Millerite history. A lot of them believe Turkey is... The one thing that I found weird is that those that believe Uriah Smith is inspired, who believe that Turkey is the king of the north, many of them still accept the 7 times, right? So they try to accept Millerite history, that is what's on the 1843 chart. But then they're going to have... Anybody really know much about what's going on in their minds? I've tried to figure it out. How somebody could accept Uriah Smith as a prophet and yet reject Uriah Smith's rejection of the 7 times. You understand what I'm saying? There seems an inconsistency to me there that I can't. So they'll take an anti-Trinitarian view. They'll take the view that the pioneers were always correct, that we accept Miller. And they're going to accept Uriah Smith, right? Because Uriah Smith teaches the same view in their minds as the Millerites, even though not all the Millerites believe, the view on understanding Daniel 11, dealing with Turkey. So there's different views that were held on Daniel chapter 11. So could this be referring to a group like that?
Possibly.
Yeah. And often we focused upon, what's happening internally within the movement. So obviously this group it says they left off following David, but there could have been some that were connected to July 18th. Or maybe it's those that were connected to July 18th who have gone to follow some of these other groups that don't have David, but have the 7 times. So Sheba could represent these other movements that are connected to Middle East history, and those that once believed in July 18th who go to follow those groups. The thing that bothers me is Joab. I don't like Joab. His character seems quite different than David's character. So this could be representing something that's going to happen in the future. So the one thing that we have to be careful about, and that I don't fully understand, because I'm not right now following anything that's going on within the movement, other than just, very sketchily in contact I have with people. So I'm not following what Jeff's saying every week. Haven't had conversations with Colin or anybody. I don't know what all the people in the American group are thinking, how things are sort of settling out after this, because we're almost to a year when Jeff has been teaching on a weekly basis on Zoom meetings, right? And you have this initial excitement that Jeff is back. But I don't think that people are necessarily in agreement with Jeff. There might be some people in agreement, but what I've seen in the movement, and even in the past when people were following Jeff, many people who were following Jeff were not happy with Jeff. That is, I would have people sort of test out to see what my loyalty to Jeff was, because they would say disparaging things regarding Jeff, criticisms, sometimes fairly minor criticisms, to see how I would respond. Do I have the same critical attitude? And even when I first came into the movement in 2010, there would be people testing me out to see how far they could go in their criticism of Jeff. That's the way I interpret it. So people had a dissatisfaction with Jeff, and that has continued. People were definitely not happy when Jeff retired. So now that he's back, and he's been back, for a year and a half, if you count from when he began publishing, and a year speaking, is there all kinds of different people who have, I just don't know all the different groups that exist, the different philosophies about what Jeff is teaching. And, and I run into a lot of people who are following Jeff who definitely don't believe like Jeff believes. That is, they have quite views that I know that Jeff would not approve of. And they have their own spin on what Jeff is teaching. So you can have followers of Jeff who believe quite divergent things, but both these people believe that Jeff is to be listened to. And some have a really negative view of me. There are some who try to somehow say that, Jeff and I are ultimately in agreement, even though we disagree. So I'm not really quite sure how they look at it, because they see some of the things I'm saying are true, which Jeff wouldn't accept. And so they want to kind of follow me and Jeff both, which makes no sense. One is, it makes no sense to follow people, but you understand what I'm saying. Okay, so we have this story, and we don't know what it means yet.
Would it not be 2.5 years or like 2 years since Jeff has been preaching?
Really? That long? Yeah, you're right. Okay, 2.5 years. Boy, that's a long time. How does that happen? Yeah, it's 2.5 years. So a lot has happened. That's kind of interesting. Okay, when I was on my walk this morning, I was doing a calculation in my head, dealing with the number 915. It used to be my apartment number. It's also the first 3 digits of my phone number, not my area code, but my phone number. And I was doing a calculation in my head. The number 915, so is a period of, if you counted it in days, is 2.5 years. I mean, more specifically, 915 is 5 times 183. So 183 is a half a year. And if you multiply it by 5, you get 915. I was going to do a study on it, but I didn't do that when I got back. Kind of forgot about it. But that 2.5 years reminds me of that. So the Hebrew number 915 is badal, a piece or a severed piece of an ear. Now, that's pretty strange that you actually have a word for that, right? I mean, we'd probably have a word for it if it was a common thing that we did. But, if we were severing ears all the time and we had this piece of a severed ear, we'd probably have a special name for it. It means to divide, to separate, distinguish, to select. So anyway, that's the number 915. And we're thinking about this 2.5 years. So I'm just going to see something here. So today's December 17th. Okay, so I'm just counting 915 days before today, which brings me to the 27th day of the 3rd month on the biblical calendar, June 16th on our calendar, and the 27th day of the 3rd month on the rabbinic calendar. So June 16th, 2023. And the Mayan date is 10/11/9. So I don't know if that means anything. Okay.
11/9, yeah.
Well, you got 11/9 there, last 2 digits. Yeah. I don't know. It's just a thought. It's nothing. Just because we're talking about this period of time. Now, so we have here in verse 4, it says, the king said the king to Amasa, assemble the men of Judah within 3 days, and thou be here present. So dealing with these 3 days, it could refer to a period of 3 years or parts of 3 years. Now, today we're just 8 days away from December 25th, and we look at the anniversary of when Jeff began speaking, December 30th, 2025. Okay, so we got this. This is interesting that he set. So there's this 3 days. So David gives this instruction to Amasa. So this is an attack. So David sees that this Sheba is a greater threat than Absalom. He's going to send Amasa to assemble men of Judah within 3 days. So what do we do with this 3 days?
Well, it reminds me of the 3 days in Ezra 10.
Yeah. Well, I know. So we got the 3 days we have it in Ezra 8 as well, the 3 days by the river Ahava, the 3 days when they get to Jerusalem before they bring the gold and the silver, and then the 3 days call to Jerusalem that ends on the 20th day of Kislev, the 20th of the 9th month. And so we got this 3 days again. We've used the 3 days. I mean, there's so many examples in Scripture of 3 days. We know that it's not 72 hours, especially, we just see again and again that it's what we call the 3rd day, even when they say 3 days. So anyway, it's here. We got this 3 days. So we have this 3 days again. But Amasa is going to tarry longer than the set time which he had appointed him. Now, this is a delay, right? That's what this tarried longer, some kind of a delay.
Which apparently infuriated Joab.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I'm not really sure why Amasa is taking longer than he's supposed to. Doesn't really say. Now, is it that Joab thinks Amasa is incompetent? Is there circumstances that, doesn't tell us why Amasa is taking so long? And he doesn't seem to think there's anything wrong. When Joab comes, he's just going to, greet him, right? He doesn't seem to be like scared of it anyway, like he did something wrong. So I'm not really sure what's going on in that story with Amasa. And then when he doesn't come back, so I think what happens is, so he doesn't come back, right? So this is verse 5. Amasa is supposed to be back at the end of 3 days. He's not back. And then David is saying to Abishai, who's going to be with Joab, this Sheba's a greater threat than we think. And it could be that Amasa going after Sheba is that the part of the thing is he doesn't, because he's supposed to assemble the men of Judah, right?
Mm-hmm.
And be back there with David, but he doesn't come back. So I'm not sure why Amasa doesn't come back. And then David's going to be concerned that Sheba, who Amasa was supposed to amass this army to go after him, isn't back. So there's something happening here that I don't fully understand. Like, there are things that are not stated, but probably are implied in the text that we should recognize, but we don't. So David is concerned, right? So he's going to send Joab and Abishai to go after Sheba because Amasa has failed to meet his deadline. Now, would David be happy that Joab is going to kill Amasa? Is that sort of implied that he should do that? It doesn't say. And then the next chapter is going to deal with the Gibeonites. So I don't know what this chapter is about, because that's going to be the day of the famine. We started looking at that a little bit. So, but anyway, we don't get any more from this story. This story is just going to be tied up. There's a lot of loose ends that I don't understand. So any final thoughts on this? I know we're going to come back and go over all this again. This is supposed to be our first pass through this.
I was wondering if 2 Samuel 20:19 is connected with 1 Samuel 26:19.
Okay, so 2019. Okay, and then in with which 1 Samuel 26?
26:19. Yeah.
Okay. Therefore I pray thee, let my lord the king hear the words of his servant. If the Lord have stirred thee up against me, let him accept an offering. But if they be the children of men, cursed be they before the Lord. For they have driven me out this day from abiding in the inheritance of the Lord, saying, go and serve other gods. Okay, so this is David and Saul.
Yeah.
When Saul was pursuing David. Okay, so what is the connection you make with
the swallow up the inheritance of the Lord, like this woman is pleading for the life of the city.
Okay. I'd have to think about that. Have to go back into that story again.
And in 21:3 again, it mentions the inheritance of the Lord, referring to the Gibeonites.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. So we'd have to look at that symbol a bit more. And you're saying 21 what?
21:3.
Okay. Maybe we'll look at the inheritance of the Lord tomorrow. Okay. Well, thanks for that. Okay. So there's no more comments. We can close in prayer. Dear Father in heaven, thank you again for the time that we've had this morning. We pray for your continued blessing upon our studies, our personal studies, Lord, and the way that you are speaking to us each day. Watch over each one, keep them safe, and bring us together again to study these things and to get to know you better. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.